The last of our myths to crack open goes like this: that our faith, our Christian faith, is the only way to God. That only Christians can find themselves connected to God, both now and in the future. A crass way of saying it, only Christians go to heaven. Now, the idea that God is accessible only through the cross is one that is long-standing. It is a long-standing tradition or teaching, popular across the centuries. We see perhaps its most vibrant expression in the Gospel of St. John, who Jesus says in that Gospel, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me." It has driven Christianity's worst experiences. It has been a part of the animosity that some within the tradition has held for outside groups, helped to fuel, for instance, anti-Semitism, and helped to fuel some of the wars and the actions that were taken against people of other faiths. This sort of thinking finds itself also in other religions and other experiences. It is a tribalism. It is tribal thinking. And again, it's not exclusive just to Christianity. There's also another tradition within Christian thought. And that is to say that instead of tribal, what we have is we have God reaching out to the whole world. And that whole world, God's love is for that whole world. And that Christianity is a path to God, but that it doesn't necessarily exclude other paths or other ways of connecting God and humanity. How do we sort through all of this? How do we understand God and our faith and community? Do we go the route of tribal identity, of tribal exclusivity? One God, one way, one people. Or do we take an approach that is seen in the synoptic Gospels when Jesus' life and ministry is being narrated? There's an openness that Jesus has to outsiders. There's an openness that Jesus displays to the Gentiles. There's an openness that Jesus encourages in his followers to share the hospitality, the inclusivity of God. This is one of those hard myths to crack, because it really depends on how you understand the grace of God, the connection of God to not only faithful followers, but to the rest of the world. If you understand that in very narrow terms, if you allow the tribalism of our tradition to take place and have the loudest voice, then you're not going to crack this myth open. In fact, you're going to say that this myth itself is untrue. The notion that God would allow and connect with other peoples is bizarre. However, if you understand the grace of God as an opening, as the community of God not confined to any one tribe, not confined even to any one religion or religious expression, and that what Jesus does is bring an openness, an invitation to all the world to be connected to God, then you will join many in the church today that has a deep respect for differences and for other traditions, that seek to learn not only from our own, but also seek to learn from the experience that God has with other peoples around the world. But if you can understand God as broadening in biggest terms possible, then this myth has to be challenged and removed, because it gets in the way of meaningful dialogue. It gets in the way of building bridges. It gets in the way of kind of putting together the kind of foundations for that kingdom of God that Jesus announces. A kingdom of justice and peace, a kingdom in which God and people are not separated but brought together. Thank you for following along on these myths as we have taken them on in this series, in this faith series. I hope that these little video segments raised more questions than they answered, and will invite you into a critical and an active engagement with the things that we've just been taught. Help us to engage what has been passed down to us, what we have inherited, and decide what is it that we want to pass on to others. Not only that, what are we going to base our lives and our faith on? God be with you, and thank you, and we'll catch you another time.